These are magazine base plates from Cain Arms, and today I'm going to show you the pros and cons of having them. So you might have seen a video I made in the past of these base plates from Strike Industries. Now these are ones that I use on my primary guns all the time, and they're really amazing. Now there are a few things that need to be kind of covered first before understanding the pros and cons of each platform. The main thing to understand is going to be first about primary purpose of use. Now if you're living in a restricted state, more likely than not, you'll pretty much never be able to get the full value of what base plates are, because the majority of the time they're adding additional rounds to the magazine that you're having. Now besides for adding additional rounds, the other benefit that people have with them is the fact that it adds more weight to the magazine. So once the firearm is empty and you have to perform a reload, that extra weight helps it fall out of the gun easier because there's more additional weight helping it with gravity just drop out of the gun. So this one from Strike Industries is one of their +0, which means there's no additional rounds. However, they do offer this exact same style with the ability to have additional rounds inside. But again, me living in a restricted state, I'm not allowed to have that. So having an additional just weight helps the magazine drop out faster, and it makes reloading a much more simple process. Now, something like this, which is the one from Cain Arms, this one also is a +0, which means it's not adding any additional rounds. But on top of that, it's also not adding any additional weight. Now, you might be looking at it in the perspective of, well, if it's not adding any rounds and it's not adding any additional weight, then what's the value of this system? Now, first of all, they do offer on their website ones that do add additional rounds to the system. So this just happens to be, again, the one that's going to be legal in my particular state, but they do offer ones that if you want to have more round capacity, they do have those as well. But what's the value in specifically having one that adds only additional length? So this is not going to add any additional weight. It's not going to add any additional capacity. It just adds more length to the grip over there. Now, there could be a few reasons why this is valuable. The primary focus for me is that if this is going to be your reload mag, which means you might have a standard magazine that fits flush into the firearm. So that's very good for appendix carry, just keeping it as minimalistic as possible. But if you're going to have a spare magazine on you, it might be nice to have that additional grip to be able to grab onto that's able to reload it into the gun. Now, since that's not going to be the one that you're primary carrying into the firearm, this obviously would be a problem, because once you do that, you're adding all that additional length that's going to be able to print the firearm. And we don't want to be able to print. We want to keep that profile as minimalistic as possible. But when it comes to being able to reload, having more weight on your appendix carry could already be very cumbersome and very irritating to deal with, because you're having a lot of just stuff on your belt line that won't be really additionally beneficial. So having a lightweight option, which means this is very, very lightweight, is, I believe it looks that it's going to be 3D printed. I'm not sure for sure if it is 3D printed, but it's very lightweight. It's very simplistically designed, which I really enjoy. Now, the point of it again is that if I'm carrying an appendix rig, having this as my spare magazine means that it's not adding much weight, but it gives me more of an ability to grab the magazine properly, to reinsert it into the gun, to get back into the fight faster. Now, here's an example of how it's going to function. Your standard magazine looks like this, and what you do is you remove the top of the magazine, and you're able to get a tool like this, which is like from Amazon. They're super cheap. I can leave a link if you guys are interested. It just simply pushes into the hole of the magazine. It pries off very simply, and then once this piece is removed, you just simply replace it with the Cain Arms +0 base plate. So you can look at this, it's really, really simplistic. All it is removing the standard base plate that you have and just replacing it with this one, which gives it additional extension. On the back, to make sure it stays in place, there's a little screw that you tighten down to make sure it stays in place. And I actually already did a few drop tests with it just to see if it would break off accidentally or anything like that. It seems to be a very nice material. So once you replace that, you'll see that it fits very nicely on the bottom of the magazine, just like that. And if you look, something I was concerned about, which is some base plates are not going to work with every magwell that you have. So if you have a magazine well, like this gun right over here, where it's able to widen up, so when you're reloading, it makes it really a lot smoother. This magwell, which was from Empire Designs, I believe, I made a dedicated video on this as well that I can link below, but you could see how it opens up wide, and in the back, there is that screw area of where this was actually mounted. And what happens to be very convenient is that the back of the screw of the magwell actually fits with the screw that fits onto the base plate. So they actually marry together very, very nicely, and they work really well. So it is able to work with this particular Magwell. I'm not sure if there was going to be an issue with other ones, which it's known to happen depending on the size, thickness, and design of the Magwell that you're using. But on this particular design and the system that I currently have, it makes it very easy to run. Now, another thing is that if you're ever going to do something called a tactical reload, there's an emergency reload and a tactical reload. An emergency reload means that you're in the middle of a gunfight, you're firing, the gun goes empty, and you have to quickly reload. So you're taking out the empty magazine and replacing it with a new magazine. A tactical reload is that if you're in a stressful situation and you just fired, very often it's very common that people don't know how many rounds they fired because they're more focused on what the goal is of what they're shooting at. So what ends up happening is you do something called the tactical reload, which means my slide is still forward, which means I know that there's at minimum at least one more round left in the chamber, but I don't know how many are left in the magazine, which means if I need to start shooting again, I would like to know the fact that I have more rounds available. So if you just finish dealing with a situation, but you're not sure if another one's going to come up, what you're going to do is you're going to remove the one that's in remove the magazine that's currently in the firearm and replace it with another one. So at the minimum, you know that I know I have at least 10 rounds in the magazine and one more in the chamber, versus like in this case, as an example, I removed it and realized there's no more rounds in the magazine. So I might have one more, but that was the one round I had left. Now, having an additional base plate like this one, it gives you more of a momentum, because what ends up happening is if you have a full magazine with the rounds in the chamber, you really need to make sure that it's seated properly. And if it doesn't lock properly, then the magazine could fall out by the next shot. So having a base plate helps you kind of slam it home and make sure that you really know that it's seated properly, and gives you that like extra momentum getting into the gun to making it work. So that's kind of the pros and cons. Again, if you're living in a restricted state, this is kind of your options that you have anyway, so you're somewhat limited. But in general, having the option to be able to have an additional extension is great as a spare magazine option without adding much weight to the system that you already have, and it helps you kind of grab it, reload it faster, and make sure that it's being seated properly. So if you guys would like to learn more about these, I'm going to leave a link in the description down below. If you have any questions or something you'd like me to test, please feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. This is Raziel Cohen with ndftraining.com. Thank you for watching.